I'd like to call to order the Proctor City Council meeting for Monday, September 20th, 2021. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Councilor Benson.
Present.
Councilor Reuter.
Present.
Councilor Johnson. Councilor DeWall.
Present.
Mayor Ward is also present. Let the minutes reflect all others present. Chief Gaddis, Chief Helquist, Leslie, Administrator Rich, Megan, and Attorney Bray. Looking for a motion to approve the City Council meeting minutes from Tuesday, September 7th, 2021.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda. I'd like to add 6J HVAC controller to that agenda before a motion is made. So with that being added, I'll entertain a motion to accept the amended agenda. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. At this time, we'll take comments and suggestions from the citizens present or viewing via YouTube channel. The call-in number for those viewing on the YouTube channel is 218-628-6289, and we'll give that a minute or two. Hearing no comments, we'll move on. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Supported by Councilor Benson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. That'll bring us to 4A, Cleaning Services, RFP update. Administrator Rich.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give an update that we have sent out the RFP to several companies, local and surrounding area, for cleaning services, contracted cleaning services here at City Hall. We sent about six to seven companies, received one definite not interested, one yes, but nothing has been submitted yet. So I just wanted to share that with you and to pass the word if you know of any local companies that might be interested in bidding on that.
Thank you. Any questions for Administrator Rich on that? Hearing none, we'll move on to 4B, illicit discharge update. Administrator Rich.
This was the discharge, potential discharge into the city's stormwater system on 6th Street that happened some time ago. And I wanted to give an update that they did identify the substance on the ground, and it was diesel. It was mitigated, and the contaminated soils were taken away. We have prepared invoice, and that has been sent to the customer to cover the costs of that mitigation and cleanup.
Thank you. Any questions regarding 4B?
What was the cost?
The total, Councilor Benson, was $5,265.45.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to 4C, MS4 permitting changes. Administrator Rich.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let you know that we have extensive changes to our MS4 permit, that we have a 12-month period to get those done. I believe there was a memo in your packet outlining those. And just to note that those changes may take up some significant staff time to get those all done within the 12 months. Specifically, we now are under that deadline for moving the sand salt facility. But the other changes are outlined in your memo.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Administrator Rich regarding 4C? Hearing none, we'll move on to 5A under unfinished business, lowest responsible bidder ordinance. The reason I'm going down through these, and maybe Attorney Bray can help us, they're not asterisk. The unfinished business isn't asterisk anymore under approval of the consent agenda. So do we got to go through each one of these even though there's no new updates, or how should we handle that?
No, I mean, we've historically done that. I would, go on. Okay. We've historically not addressed them individually unless people have pulled them off, so I think we can continue to do that, even if they're not asterisk tonight.
Just skip right over
Yeah.
all unfinished business? Okay.
Yeah, we've discussed it, now
Okay.
we've addressed the issue.
Thank you, Attorney Bray.
Mhm.
Any other questions regarding any of the items under unfinished business?
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor, I do
Benson?
have one,
Okay.
since you were asking. We have government data practices. I know we've been working to update that, and I was just wondering if we could get an update.
There is no update.
Okay.
There's been some other projects that have taken priority over that agenda item, Councilor Benson.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding unfinished business? Hearing none, we'll move on to 6A, 2022 Initial Levy. Leslie.
So by the end of September, we need to submit a preliminary levy amount to St. Louis County. So that is why I'm presenting a preliminary budget for you tonight, so that you are informed before you make that decision as to what that levy amount should be. I've put together some slides. They are, for the most part, except for the graphics, they're the same information that was put in the packet. So if you would like to follow along on your own packet, that might be easier for you to see. First, just some history on levy amounts. There was a larger increase about 6 or 7 years ago in the levy, and since then it's just been real steady, slow, gradual increases each year, just to make sure that we can keep up with salary increases and things of that nature. We're not proposing anything radically different this year. Go ahead. So this would be a 3% levy increase. Our general fund would actually go up 3.8% with that levy increase, because our bonded debt goes down just slightly in 2022 compared to 2021. This is the amount that I put into the budget that I prepared tonight. You can certainly set the levy higher than that. Once we make that preliminary levy, once we send it to the St. Louis County, we're not able to increase it, but we are able to decrease it. So traditionally, I think that the thought process had been to set it a little higher than we think we need, and then we have room in case something comes up between now and when we set the final budget. Next slide. Just a graphic here that's indicating the trend of the levy. The levy amount is the lower line, and the amount on the upper line is the net tax capacity that we have to levy those taxes against. So the levy has actually been going up at a slower rate than the next net tax capacity. That's hard to say. And the note that I put on the right there says that the estimated increase in tax capacity at 2%, so that's just what I estimated it at with our 3% budgeted levy increase. The actual, the average of the last 5 years of tax capacity increases has been closer to 6.3%. So if we used that average, the taxpayer would actually see a decrease in their tax rate of 3.7%.
Could you go back one more screen? Thank you.
This is, oh wow, that's really tiny. I can't even see it from here. This is a graphical representation just of the revenues. This was the 2021 budget. Just to give you kind of a real broad scope of this, the big chunk on the right, that's the tax levy. The larger chunk on the left, that's the local government aid from the state of Minnesota. And so you can see that really all of the other things that we do here, you know, charges for services for different things are really a very small portion of our revenue that we take in to pay everything that we need to do to provide for the city of Proctor. And this is the expenses that we're paying from those revenue funds. The largest portion of that, the purple section, is for public safety. I believe that the green section is general government and orange would be public works. Is that correct, Megan?
Orange is tourism.
Oh, no, like red.
Oh, the red is public works. Yeah.
Red is public works, and then orange is tourism. And then on this slide, I am showing the same expenses, so the same total expenses, but just split out a different way. This is more of a functional split. So the big purple section is salaries and benefits. So really, the majority of the city's expenditures are salaries and benefits for all the different positions. Now, this part is included in your packet. It would be the preliminary budget summary, the second page in your packet. So this is the revenues that we're projecting. Our 2020 actuals, what we budgeted for 21, and what we're recommending for 22. Again, the general tax levy, that represents a 3% levy increase. The other note that I'd make on the intergovernmental portion of that is that we did also receive some grant funds for COVID relief and the American Rescue Plan funds. Those are not included in these. We've broken those out separately so that they don't skew our numbers from year to year. So our total revenue would be a 3.8% increase from the 2021 budget. In expenses, we've got the first three here are police, fire, and streets. Mostly, the biggest portion of increase here is salaries and benefits. So our contracts have laid out a 3% salary increase for all of our contracts. So that is the bulk of what's going up. We did have open positions in the police department this year, anticipating that those are filled and showing that at full employment. We've also added some for additional mental health services for our police force. And we do have a bit of an aging fleet of our police cars. And actually, it's not even as much as aging as really we've sort of under budgeted for repairs and maintenance for our vehicles. So based on our 2020 actual, we're looking at increasing from the 2021 budget for repairs and maintenance. For the fire department, we're also proposing a salary increase there. That's not under any of our negotiated contracts, union contracts, but there will be a proposal brought to the personnel committee for the 2022 year, and we've reflected those changes here. There are a couple of capital items in this budget as well for the police, and actually we'll be talking about that in a later agenda item tonight. Streets, the main change here besides the salary increase was higher repair costs for their aging equipment. An increase in parks for the beautification committee. Again, I believe there's another agenda item tonight to talk about that. And then the general city admin, essentially just our change in personnel, and then you'll see kind of a shift between salary and other services due to the outsourced contract for cleaning services for City Hall. And then on that same sheet in your packet, we've split out some of the items that come from different funds, not the general fund. So our sales tax fund, food and beverage, and then some of the federal grants that we've received for COVID and the ARPA grant. Also, there is a small cities grant that we will be receiving for small cities road funding. On the next page, I've got a recap of our capital. This is forecasting out. In your packet, it goes to 2026. These are the different things that have been identified by the various department heads that are either already in works in planning or things that they see as needs. And again, we can talk about all the details of these in a further meeting when we get into more detail. Tonight, we just need to set that preliminary levy. I've also included a couple of schedules here. This first one is detailing out the designated funds that we have as part of the general fund. So there are a lot of different things that have been designated over the years. Some of them are by state statute, and some of them are just designated from the city council or from other bodies. So, things like the public safety fund to fund police vehicles and fire vehicles in the future is an example of one of those funds. So I have all the details of those and where their ending balance was at the end of 2020 on this schedule. And then on the next one, I have shown the projection for 2021 and 2022 based on what we're budgeting and where those funds will end up at the end of 2022. All right, so this is really the crux of what we have to decide by September 30th is where we want that levy to come in. This is a detail of how a levy change would impact a homeowner with various values for their home. If we go with the 3%, which is what we have put in this budget, it would result in a change in taxes, an increase for a homeowner of a $200,000 home of $11.73. If we increase that levy to 4.75, it would be a $32.25 increase for that same homeowner. If we kept the levy the same and had a 0% increase, it would reduce their taxes by $23.45. Now, I have just shown these numbers as examples. You certainly can put any number you want out there at this point. And also then on the right, the impact of the general fund. So I put the 3% in this budget. If we went up to 4.75, that would give us an increase. I cannot see that from here, and I don't have that sheet in front of me. 28,000. And then if we went to if we had a 0% levy increase, we would have to reduce the items that we have shown here in this budget by just about $50,000. That is all I have to present for tonight, but I'm certainly open to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions for Leslie?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Benson?
Could you tell us what the inflation rate or cost of living is?
In the budget, I believe I pulled the consumer price index general inflation number, and I believe it was 2.4 was the number I was using for this budget.
3.4 for?
2.4.
2.4
Yeah.
for inflation.
But that is a really tricky one right now. The more current rate in the last few months has been quite a bit higher than that. So I used an annualized rate, and I think that's something that we'll have to watch as we go into November and setting the final levy.
So we could set the budget higher,
Yes,
or the rate, can't go above that, but we could always
Right.
drop it down.
absolutely.
Any other questions from council?
Your recommendation is?
I put 3% into this budget, and I would recommend at least that amount. I know Administrator Rich has probably an idea too, and I'll let her tell her take on it.
My recommendation is the 4.75, not going below 3% for the preliminary budget levy.
And like Councilor Benson mentioned, you can always go lower than the initial
Yeah.
levy, but you can't go above it, so.
And last year, we did 5.75 for the initial levy, just to remind you.
But then we dropped it.
We
correct?
did, we dropped it to 3.
Yeah.
And I guess I like Administrator Rich's recommendation, because then it gives us time to fine tune our budget, and we can always lower it if need be. When we go through item by item, gives us some wiggle room to play with, I guess. What's council's opinion, thoughts, concerns? Hearing nothing. No other questions for Leslie? Thank you. Councilor Benson?
I didn't really have a chance to go over, I just saw the budget because we were out of town. It appears that as we're looking at this budget, and one of the highlights I gleaned out of it was that we're not so much looking at capital expenditures as we are at repairs to both equipment and the buildings.
Yeah, there was a capital expenditure request for the street department, kind of looking, he kind of laid out a schedule for the next 5 years, and really kind of one piece of equipment each year to kind of keep things going. Nothing is imminent, but because of the age of some of the equipment, just wanting to make sure that there's enough budget there if something were to break. That, if one of those large trucks that they run on the streets breaks down, it's a big bill.
Do you have one more?
I may have one more. Well, maybe not, since I'm illiterate. I was trying to focus in, I believe, on that second slide, the estimated increase, the tax capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And was that at 2% or 3%?
Megan, can you go back to that slide? I don't have a printout of it.
I could give you a call tomorrow.
I can send you the slides, Counselor Benson.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Leslie? Hearing none. Thank you, Leslie. Good job on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now council has decisions to make on where they want to set the initial levy for the year 2022. So we'll entertain a motion if anyone has any ideas. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and make a motion. Hearing nothing, I will make a motion to set our initial levy for 2022 at 4.75%.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thanks again, Leslie. That'll bring us to 6B, SRO contract. Chief Gaddis or Administrator Rich? Chief Gaddis?
Thank you, Mayor. I met with the superintendent of schools to discuss this coming school year's school resource officer contract. There was just some minor changes in some wording to the contract, and there was no proposed increase. So the contract is essentially the same, but Chief Gaddis has some additional items that they will be addressing this year in that contract.
I was at the school board meeting last Monday night, and the SRO, excuse me, the SRO contract was brought up. They were, the school district with cooperation, we bought a sealer machine with the school district years ago. They were to seal the fire hall and the historical society this year. They agreed that they will do our parking lots here, do the fire halls, historical society lots, and seal coat them next year as part of working together with that. So, you can't hear me? Okay, sorry about that. So that was one thing that they did mention. The other issue was that they really wanted to do more of a multi-year contract and talk to the city about proceeding with a multi-year contract, talking about more about hopefully we can get more funds to pay for this position. Not just do a one-year contract all the time like some of the council members and the board members brought up as an issue, instead of doing this, and hopefully we don't have to worry about COVID and we can move forward with a longer contract.
Yep, and I will add that those in-kind contributions, I guess you could put it as a seal coating, are helpful to the city. And then also addressing the multi-year contract. We talked about a multi-year contract, but with the staffing issues right now in the police department, we did not want to commit too far out, not knowing the trend in police hiring is not encouraging, and we didn't want to commit our forces to something that we may not be able to follow through with. So at this time, we're just proposing a one-year contract.
Thank you.
And it's also in the contract still to pay for training and work with the school on that too.
Thank you.
And Matthew Reball, the officer, is going to Nazaro training. The first class got canceled, but he is going to attend that.
Do you know when that is?
He signed up for it and is like immediately after. They canceled it, moved it to, I want to say either, I think December or something like
December
that.
timeframe?
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
and it's online.
Thank you. All right, so we're looking for a motion to accept the SRO contract for the school year of 2021 to 2022.
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Benson. Any discussion? Councilor Benson?
Thank you. Chief, in the agreement, does it discuss the in-kind services?
That's what was brought up when I talked to them, what they were supposed to do this year, but no, it does not mention that in here, in the contract. But they brought that up of doing in-kind services for the city.
Thank you.
Any further discussions?
Yeah, just a couple.
Councilor Wall?
What kind of value would we put on the ceiling services, roughly?
So I would say $3 to $5 grand.
Okay. Second question, I would strongly encourage for us to negotiate a 3-year contract, and I think we should get on that now. We seem to wait. I find it kind of frustrating that the contract was presented to the school board and approved before it was really brought to us. We're the one extending the contract. So I'd like to see negotiations continue for a 3-year contract with some language in there per staffing, you know, some kind of a language. I'm sure Mr. Bray can come up with some fancy lingo if we're short-staffed or whatever, but it sets it out. It's easier for them to budget. We always do this at the last minute of the day, and it's just real easy to just go, we'll do the same, we'll do the same, we'll do the same. We just went through a budget with a 3% increase in wages and benefits as one of our biggest expenses. And it's hard as a counselor to represent the citizens of Proctor to force the payment of this SRO service on them when it's a district-wide type of a thing. There's got to be grants, monies available through townships that can maybe help this out, and that'll help maybe generate some revenue to help pay. I believe in the product. I believe in the SRO. But I also know that it's an expense, and right now it seems to be an expense of the Proctor taxpayer.
And I agree with you, Counselor. We did ask to increase the funds. I'm happy that we do have an agreement, because it's just like, we have something, you know, I wish we had more, but, you know, we do spend an awful lot of time at the school at times. And yes, we'd like to get more funds out of that. I agree with you.
Councilor DeWall's sentiment there as well. Over last, I think this is going on year number 3, correct? With the
This would be,
SRO?
yes.
It's stayed at 25 for the life of the agreement so far. And to see the taxpayers of Proctor covering that expense when it does benefit the whole district. I was talking to a commissioner, and I believe there's grant money available for townships, so I'd like to see that discussed with the school for negotiations next time too. Maybe some of these townships that are in the school district can reach out and try and offset some of the expenses that the residents of Proctor have been paying for.
And they do understand that with our staffing levels that, you know, this SRO may not be there full-time, you know, and we have to sit there and adjust the schedule of that, and they understand that. And last year, you know, we did not have too much of a presence over there because there was no school. You know, but they do understand this year that we're in the process of hiring people, we're in the process of training people, and we may have to sit there and pull that officer out of the school here and there.
Perfect, thank you. I have one other question. You highlighted the academic calendar year, must have been language change from last year. Is that just to clean it up so there's not specific dates in there?
We're going by what the school goes by, and the biggest thing for me was when they did host the MS-150, if the contract ended, we were still dealing with issues with the MS-150 and the school and the property across the street. That would help, and then that also helped try to get money back from the MS-150 to pay for our services when we're over there, that we're covering that area.
Thank you.
Then
Any other questions? Councilor Benson?
Mr. Mayor, and I do agree with Councilor DeWall and yourself, and I go back to why are we funding not only Proctor, helping subsidize the townships, but also paying for an SRO in School District 2142. County has no problem spending money there, even though there's a half a dozen cities within that school district that are not contributing. Yet the taxpayers in 704 and the city of Proctor are contributing to not only our SRO, but to
And my
2142.
Yeah, and my understanding on that, Councilor Benson, is because 2142 is a county-ran school district. That's my understanding. Is a county-ran school district.
Doesn't matter to me, it's our taxpayers are paying for it.
I understand
And
what
if
you're
you're going to do it for one, they should do it for all. And I would suggest during the budget process, we send another resolution to the county.
Thank you.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
Never does. Thank
And
you.
maybe this time it'll actually get to the county board.
Any further discussion?
I would like to continue negotiations for a 3-year contract. This is year 1 in my opinion. I don't want to drop the ball. They're their school budgets are done in what, June, July?
June.
Yes.
So, I mean, let's keep it going. If we need to get the negotiating committee involved, let's do that. But I want to get a 3-year deal done with some increments and then go after some of that money through the county, working with our neighbors, townships. Because I think it can be done.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councilor Duval, but one of the things I'd like to see us look at too is when we first started this SRO, the school was paying us $46,000, something like that a year.
Sounds about right.
Because they took up the time of an officer for 9 out of 12 months. So I think we need to look at how much time our officers are spending over there, and if they're actually spending most of 9 months in there, there's no reason we should be subsidizing the school. I don't know if it's when they threatened to not have an SRO that we decided to negotiate down to 25, but I think it's been long enough that they've been getting them for free, pretty much. You know, we're there all the time, and, you know, if they're gonna budget, they can add that amount into their budget just like we do in ours, so I think we should consider that. But I agree with Troy. I think we should try to get a longer contract.
So right now, we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the 1-year deal. Do we want to withdraw that motion and proceed with sitting down with the school again to negotiate a longer-term contract? How does council, do you want to accept the 1-year deal and continue with the negotiations for an extension for another 2 years?
Well, I'd like to see us try to go for an extension, but I don't want to, I think we should just approve this budget. It's already been, they've kind of worked things out. Let's get it done and get through this school year, and over the winter, we can negotiate with the school for a couple additional years, or that would be my opinion.
Councilor DeWall?
I'm fine with the first year, and I'm glad we're getting some in-kind service back. That helps, but as Councilor Reuter indicated, I don't want to drop the ball, because we'll approve this. I'm afraid we're going to approve this, and the next thing we'll be sitting here in July talking about we got to sit down with the school. I want to keep working at it and get those numbers to them so that they have time to work through their budgets before they're due.
Chief?
I could add something.
Somebody said something, I don't know.
I was going to add something.
Oh, you,
So-
okay.
So having hopefully a full school year where we can get data on, like the council members say, about how much time do we spend up there? How many actual calls of service do we have up there? I think the biggest thing is the time that the officers spend up there. Regardless if we have a contract or not with the school district, the day shift officers will be up at that school. And it takes up a lot of time. So I would like to sit there and get that data. When we do have a school resource officer, here's how much time Officer Rebo has spent up there, and here's how much time the other staff has spent going there. It'd be hard sometimes to get some of that data, but at least we can sit there and work on that and hopefully have a full school year where the kids are in school.
I think we could go back in time and look at history, Chief Gates.
Yeah.
We've had an SRO before the COVID. We have data, because I've looked at reports from it. So, I mean, I don't want to wait a full school year to get this data to go back to the negotiating table.
No, I understand that, but I think hopefully this year they're in school the whole time, and we'll have a good grasp on it by, December or whatever, half the school year, here's how much time we're spending in there. Is that fair?
I think what council's asking, though, is if we accept this 1-year agreement, I think we're looking at either the negotiating committee, along with Administrator Rich and yourself, sitting down right away
Yes.
to negotiate an additional 2 years.
But I want to, not to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor, but I want you, as a group, to have some data to go, no, this is how much time the officers are spending there, this is how much time the SRO is spending there, so we have this to present to them.
Okay. Councilor Benson?
Oh, and I would advocate for supporting the motion, if only for potential liability concerns, just so we could have an agreement in place. Also, I would like to see at the end of the first semester a report so we could kind of gauge how it's going, at least in the beginning of the school year. And then, as Councilor DeWall said, begin negotiating for that extension.
Councilor Johnson, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I agree that I think we need to take care of this first motion. And then I think we should need to put another motion out there, or add on to this one, of we start negotiations right away, but I'm not sure whose responsibility that is to start them negotiations. Is that Administrator Rich? Is that Chief Gaitis? Is that Troy and I?
I think that's all in the whatever motion. And I agree with you, Counselor. And my question was going to be directed at Attorney Bray. Can we make that motion? SRO contract was on the agenda. Can we make a motion as far as sitting down to negotiate 2 more years on this contract?
Sure.
Counselor Benson?
Or just to add on with what Councilor Johnson was saying, on the other side, do we negotiate with an interim superintendent, or do we wait till a new one?
Yeah. We do
That
it
might have a
interim.
different philosophy or understand the value of an SRO.
Right. But, and to be honest, I did not know until Counselor Roweeder brought up the $46,000, and to me, if we're negotiating, this $25,000 is gonna go up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what Counselor Reuter was referring to, that when you guys were getting that 46, I think there was some grant money for SROs involved, and that's why the SRO went away eventually, because that grant money went away?
When I was first hired in 96, 97, I believe we got the COPS grant to put a school resource officer in. And if I remember correctly, the monies went down per year, in the agreement of the COPS grant was to fully fund an officer after it was done. Then we were lucky enough to get another grant, but basically the same language in it, and then same thing happened, and then we didn't have an SRO. So about 6 years it was 2 years fully funded probably, and then the other 4 probably it went down and not funded.
Two 3-year grants.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I agree with you, Counselor Johnson, that there's hoping to get more money, but that, I believe that is why it was so much more back then, is because there was grant money. And I'm sure there's some sort of funding now, like Counselor DeWall mentioned, and I've been told by a commissioner that there is for townships to go after, not cities, so.
But, Mr. Mayor, I think that regardless of whether there's grant funding or not, if they're using up 3/4 of a policeman's time, they should be paying for it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, it'd be different if, like we've discussed before, if everybody in the district was kicking into that, but they're not.
And I don't mean to pick on Chief Elquist, but we got a fire contract out there with a township right now, and that goes up every year. It doesn't stay at X amount for 3 years. It continually goes up in cost because our wages and benefits go up. The cost of doing business goes up. So I do agree that there should be an increase there. With that being said, Councilor Benson, you got one more?
I was just going to say, you know, as we're talking about sharing, even in 2142, even though it is a county school, they still contribute more than 704
Correct.
towards the SRO.
Correct. Any further discussion?
Just a question of whose responsibility is it to negotiate?
Like I said, I think that would all depend on what the motion is made after, if there is a motion made after this first motion is voted on. If council wants to see negotiating committee, if they want to see negotiating committee and administrator and the chief, I think that motion would determine who's going to be in negotiations. correct?
And whoever is, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, whoever is a part of that, I would definitely like to see whatever is hot off the press or negotiated come to us first before it gets approved at a school board meeting.
I would agree with that. It's our services we're providing.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Chief
The
Davis.
former SRO just came in, he must have been watching, he said the crime levy language changed, where we used to get a lot more funding back, and they changed it where they could use those funds and allocate it to other things. So that's what he was trying to tell me out there. Okay?
Okay,
That helps a little bit with history.
thank you.
Remember that.
Makes sense? All right, that being said, we do have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the SRO contract for the school year of 2021 through 2022. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Now, there was some discussion there regarding sitting back down with the school immediately to negotiate a couple more years on that contract. Is there a motion out there to direct someone to sit down?
I'll
and
make a
negotiate?
motion to direct Administrator Rich to pick a committee of her choice to immediately sit down with the school and start negotiating year 2 and year 3. That we would amend to or add to this agreement.
I'll second that.
You heard the motion from Counselor DeWald, seconded by Counselor Reuter. Any further discussion? I would just say, I don't care who's on it, but we do have a negotiating committee. I don't know if you two are interested, but that would be my suggestion. But if we're leaving it up to Administrator Rich, I don't care. So, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you, Chief Gaddis and Administrator Rich. That'll bring us to 6C, Police Civil Service Commission hiring recommendation. Chief Gaddis.
After hiring process of going through, the police commission has conducted oral interviews, we've conducted background checks, psychological tests, medical tests on the candidate, and the police commission makes a recommendation to hire Michael Bradley as an entry-level police officer for the city of Proctor.
You heard the recommendation from Chief Gaddis to hire Michael Bradley as an entry-level position on the police department. Is there a motion to accept that? I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Counselor DeWalt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
That'll bring us to 6D, Tourism Committee recommendation, PAHA funding request. In your packet was a letter from Visit Proctor for a grant funding request in the amount of $2,500 for the Proctor Area Hockey Association. And that would be for marketing and promotion of the 21-22 hockey tournaments. Is there a motion to accept that funding request?
Mr. Mayor, I'll so move that.
Councilor Benson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Reuter. Any further discussion?
Does anybody know what we gave them last year or the
What we
year before?
paid them last year? Do you know?
I can find out.
We can get you that. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6E, Sand Salt Shed Engineering Contract. Administrator Rich.
I'm going to make this very easy for you, and I am actually going to recommend not approving this. I've had some time to think about the project, and we've had no meetings, and I need more information from SEH. Specifically, this is calling for engineering and consulting for a phase 1 and phase 2. And after discussing it and just thinking about it, I'd like them to add a phase 3 to the project to break out this very large project into 3 smaller segments rather than just 2, which would definitely change this letter of agreement and the amount that we're going to pay them. This was based on a phase 1 that included the sand salt and a 40 by 60 garage and site prep for a larger public works facility. And I would like to see phase 1 just to be for the sand salt facility, and phase 2 for the 40 by 60, and phase 3 for the larger public works. After thinking about it, my recommendation is to not accept this letter of agreement.
Thank you. And now I'm going to make it difficult. Do we want to vote it down, or do we want to table it?
You don't have to do it, you can table it.
Table it, put it under unfinished business?
Sure.
Okay.
Or no
You don't
action,
have to take
yeah.
any action at all, really.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I
action.
needed to do
Just
some
no
more
action.
processing on it, so.
Okay. Does council have any questions regarding 6E? Then we'll just move.
No, other than I would totally agree with Administrator Rich.
Thank you.
Yep.
We'll just move forward then with no action on 6E. 6F, Raceway Fair Board request. Administrator Rich.
Thank you. This request is coming from the Fair Board and the Speedway Board. I made sure that I did get letters from them to sign off on it, that their boards are actually requesting this and not perhaps a smaller group of people that want to see this done. What they would like to do is go in cooperation with the city, because the city owns the land and the improvements on it, is to demolish the existing beer concession building, which my understanding when it was in the city of Duluth, it was actually condemned by the city of Duluth. It's in rough shape. They would like to have a proposed replacement, which is a kind of a trendy canister beer garden, and we'll have a patio and patio lights. It's a step towards our direction of improving the speedway and the speedway services. So you have an estimate of what would cost the city to help them get that demolished, and then they would pay for the proposed replacement. And so you have those estimates in front of you.
Any idea on the asbestos removal?
I don't. I just did some research. Some people have been in it and they don't believe that there's asbestos in it. That's why I did just not do the asbestos removal. I guess if we got an inspection and we realized it was going to be thousands of dollars, of course that would come back to the council for decisions.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion to approve the demo of this building using the 10% gambling fund that as recommended, correct?
Yep, and a contribution towards a 501c3 or a festival organization is an approved use of the 10% gambling funds. So this would be considered a contribution towards the fairgrounds and how they use the building.
So we're looking for a motion. I'd like to have a little discussion before that motion is made. I guess I'd like to see council put a cap or something on that asbestos removal, that if we approve this, we'd like it to come back if it hits X amount of dollars to do that. That would be my suggestion, but
Actually, I think I would come to you with any amount.
Any
Because
amount?
I didn't put an amount in the budget.
Okay.
So if asbestos was found, and then we would get a quote to remove it, and I would like you to approve that as well.
thank you, that makes me feel better. So I'll make a motion to go ahead with the demo of the Raceway Fairgrounds building using 10% gambling fund, and if any asbestos is found, it would be brought back to council for an additional approval. That's my motion.
I'll second for discussion.
Councilor DeWall seconds for discussion.
Clarification, who owns the building again?
From what I understand from talking in history, and the grounds and everything on it was given to the city of Proctor,
So we own all buildings on the grounds then?
with the exception of the arena, the
old
turf.
hockey arena.
Yeah, the old hockey arena. That's my understanding from looking through the file.
I guess that was my understanding, because they gotta come to us for any repair or work that they do on the building, correct?
I was just
Counselor Ryder, do
asking
you-
for a clarification
Okay.
at real estate values and real estate taxes. If we own the building, how do we put real estate taxes on something we already own? But I was just seeing if maybe that got clarified.
Are you talking about the taxes that we would include? There was some question marks around that, I would agree with that. What we think happened is Speedway got attached to that permit, because they're the ones that pulled the permit, where the city of Proctor should have pulled the permit. I think there's some clarification in order from the county assessor's office.
Yeah, I think they operate the place under a management agreement. If I'm right, and there shouldn't be real estate taxes paid. They should not have to pay it, we shouldn't have to pay it.
And that's from us. And the county changed their rules on that if you're leasing from a public entity, that you do pay taxes
Right.
on it. So it could go either way.
It's really a kind of an arbitrary rule, because if you call it a management agreement, but it essentially has the same terms, there is no real estate taxes.
Right,
It's
I
kinda
agree.
silly.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Benson?
I think the same issue occurred with the golf course building.
That's why it's under a management agreement.
Yes. And the Racing Association has a similar problem, which is why they, Representative Murphy and Representative Sandsted introduced some legislation back to take that burden off of the speedways in both Proctor and Hibbing, Chisholm, wherever the other one is. So that could be one of our legislative issues as well.
Thank you.
Hate to take money away from us, but in the long run, I think it's good for the financial health of the racetrack.
Yep. Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6G, Fire Department AFG grant purchases. Chief Helquist and Administrator Rich.
Yep, I will start out on this, Mayor. As the memo explains, we did receive a FEMA Assistance to Fire, or AFG grant, for the purchase of SCBA units and extraction equipment. And due to COVID, this grant award took some time, so prices have changed on this. The city, according to the grant agreement, is committed to spending $7,776. In addition, we received a grant from Enbridge, and we budgeted $30,000 in 2021 towards SCBA replacement. So if you were to consider total funds available for this project, it'd be $193,029. I have some recommendations of purchasing different amounts of SCBA units, which brings us into different levels of compliance with the NFPA compliance. And those recommendations are in front of you. If you went with 16 units, that brings you into 80% compliance, and we would be under budget for the project. And then, of course, there's 16, 18, and 20 are laid out as suggested, and where you lie in your expenditure and your budget. If you went to option number 2 or not option number 3, it's our recommendation, mine and Finance Director Brunfelt, to use ARPA money for that. That is a very qualified expenditure, breathing apparatus for firefighters, that could be used for the ARPA money. You do not have to use ARPA money. You could use general fund money to purchase them or not, but these are the recommendations in front of you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept one of the options in front of you regarding the SCBA equipment?
I move option 3.
Option 3, motion by Counselor Benson. Is there a second? I will second that option. Any discussion? I have one, oh, go ahead, Counselor Johnson, I'm sorry.
Personally, I want to hear from Chief, and nothing against Administrator Rich, and I want to hear from Troy.
Sure.
I mean, these people work with the fire department, let's hear from them.
Sure. Before you go, Chief Helquist, can I ask just one question to Administrator Rich? In Leslie's budget presentation today, was there money budgeted in there for SCBA packs this coming year? I thought there was.
I believe there was, Chief. Can you remind me why we needed additional ones, or did we build it? I can't, I don't recall.
The additional air packs from the grant we put in for 18. The grant writer wrote it for 18. The federal government made it 16 because of seats. We have a new truck coming in December, which has 5 seats. So that's why we're up to 20 to fill those seats, is where that comes from. And then, yeah, so if you went with option 1 or 2, we'd have to fill those seats in next year in 2022. The price increase takes place October 31st of this year. So I believe there was, I think she put $15,000 in the budget for next year. That would obviously come off of the budget.
So that was an anticipation if you do not approve all 20.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering, so
Yeah.
thank you.
But yeah, the idea with our air packs that we have right now, we do not have an air pack in our fire hall that is not past date. So the idea originally was this year with the $30,000 was to start the process. This AFG grant, this is the 3rd year that we put in for this, and we were lucky enough this year to get it, which I don't know how many years it goes back. I believe this is our 12th or 13th year that we put in for the AFG grant, and they're very hard to get, as we all know. It's a critical piece of equipment for anything we do firefighting, even if you're not inside of a burning building. The transformer fire we had over at the railroad, we had 6 people in SCBA due to a combustible liquid fire. So it is a critical component of what we do on a safety standpoint, because I really don't want to see, you know, making a phone call to someone's wife that someone's lungs are burned up because we didn't have the proper equipment. So, and with the 3 options that were there, I mean, I can't even tell you how many hours I spent on this, researching everything and doing all this and talking with Jess and Leslie. They were kind enough to help me lay it out, because I'm not that good with the numbers, but they did an awesome job of laying this out to where we would be. So that's kind of where we're at there, Mr. Johnson.
Councilor Johnson.
Okay, so you're saying, which one are you recommending?
Option number 3, because there's a 8% increase on October 31st of this year. The 20 packs gets us compliant with NFPA when our new truck comes. If we wait till December to buy those other 4 packs, it's gonna be probably close to $60,000 for the 4 packs, where at this point we're getting them for, you know, less than $7,300 a piece, if I remember exactly correct. I'd have to look at the numbers. I don't have that packet in front of me.
Any further discussion?
I would just only add that I think it makes sense to go with option 3. Not only do we save the 8%, but it gives us $15,000 for next year's budget that we may have to appropriate somewhere else, which, you know, one hand helps the other. So my recommendation is, along with Chief Helquist and Mr. Rich, whoever did the motion, I forgot, option 3.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes, and thank you for the getting that grant out there. I don't know who all worked on it, but good job on that. That's a
Lot of time. Thank you.
6H, Resolution 33-21 gambling permit. In your packets, resolution of non-objection to issuance of state of Minnesota charitable gambling license for, to conduct a raffle November 15th, 2021 through December 23rd, 2021 at the Proctor High School Gymnasium for the Duluth Softball Players Association. Looking for a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve,
Counselor
adopt
Reuter.
resolution 3321.
Sorry about that. Counselor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 6I, ordinance 03-21, second reading, 807, hunting deer by bow and arrow. Last meeting, there was this first reading. I believe the only language change is you struck out language, a hunter shall be required to harvest a doe prior to harvesting a buck. This would be the second reading and looking for a motion to approve those changes.
I'll make that motion.
Counselor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 6J, HVAC controller. Administrator Rich, Counselor DeWall.
And I apologize on the agenda, but we just had a meeting on this with Johnson Controls this afternoon. Counselor DeWall and I did. We have been working over the last several months on getting control of the HVAC system here. As you can feel tonight, it's rather toasty in this room, and we're having problems controlling the chiller, which is the AC unit. And then for many years, we've had a problem controlling the air and the heat on the police department side of the building. And so after looking at extensive options today, Counselor DeWall and I are recommending a purchase of a controller that will help with that situation. And with that, I'll turn it over, Counselor DeWall.
Yeah, there's no easy way to explain this, but we haven't had control over on that edge of the building, side of the building for many years. And we've, myself, along with Administrator Rich, have been 500 here, 1,000 here, slowly putting some pieces in play so that when we were able to pull the trigger, we could start actually gaining control over it. This is more of a major piece of that. I would like to make sure that we have heat on that side of the building, because one of these winters is going to be extremely rough. Second, it's going to also give us a little more hand control on the chiller itself. Hopefully we won't have to be resetting it daily to try to keep it constant. And also there is a, I want to say $5,000 increase at the end of this month. So we're looking at savings of $5,000, in excess of $5,000. We've been this has been on the plan, been on the radar for over a year. And I think now is a good opportunity to, and we're working within our budget, maintenance budget, to pull the trigger and start putting these pieces together.
We'll add a couple more items. As Councilor DeWall touched on, it is within budget. We have a remaining government buildings budget, the maintenance that we can spend. And then in addition, Johnson Controls is a Sourcewell approved vendor. So with that, we do not have to go out for bids on this, as they're already our approved purchasing vendor. And the exact savings to purchasing this now is $7,000, and these units are going to be expandable into future controls that can be integrated. So they're not just standalone controllers. As we get towards our goal, they can be integrated into total building control.
So 7,000 total to replace labor.
In savings if we do it now,
okay,
yes. And that's why we had to bring it to you tonight, because at the end of the month, the $7,000 price increase will take effect.
Sure. What is the total cost, do you know?
I'm sorry, yeah, it's $25,000.
25?
And that is for install, up to $25,000.
Could be less.
Could
Okay.
be less.
Okay. Thank you. Any more to add on that, either one of you? No? Okay. Looking for a motion to approve the purchase of the HVAC controller
So
at a
moved.
cost of up to $25,000.
So moved.
Counselor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second? Second by Counselor Johnson. Any further discussion?
Was that a heat track?
It's an HVAC controller, so.
Eight, the number eight?
H
track.
HVAC.
Oh, HVAC. Okay. Thank you.
You're hearing 8-track over there.
Yeah, that's, I know HVAC. I was just wondering what an eight-track had to do with it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to members' concerns. Counselor Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just got one item, and for the chief. I was just wondering the outcome of the trailer that went to auction.
The trailer, it sold, and I can't remember what it sold for. I want to say, I want to guess, it was just under 7,000, if I remember right.
You could give a call.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything further, Counselor Benson?
That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor DeWall.
Nothing at this time.
Nothing. Counselor Johnson.
I'm okay, thank you.
Counselor Reuter.
I just have one quick question. Can anybody tell me the status of the Welcome to Proctor sign that got hit up in my corner? Is the chamber going to buy a new one? Is the city, what are we doing with that?
Right, so we are looking into our insurance right now, and what we had determined is that the chamber bought it, but it is city-owned, and it is, we believe it is covered under our insurance. So we have our agent, Eric Madsen, looking into it, and I have the chamber looking into the original cost so we can get estimates on replacing it. And as you just know, insurance claims take time. And of course, our insurance will go, they'll see to it that they appropriate people that they.
Okay, thank you.
We know who the driver was, and we're trying to go after get the insurance information from the driver that crashed into the sign. Hopefully, they had insurance.
Thank you. Anything further?
No.
Thank you, Counselor. I just got a few things. I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting, so I'd just like to say, hope the school, staff, students have a safe return to school, and to remind motorists to slow down, pay attention to school buses and walkers out there. And also, I'm sure you've seen, we've had some vehicle prowls lately, some thefts, break-ins, so just do your due diligence on locking up your vehicles, making sure the keys and valuables are out of it. I know Chief Gaddis and his staff are well aware and working on it, but I just want to remind people to make sure their vehicles are locked at night. That's all I have. Attorney Bray.
Nothing from me.
Nothing. Administrator Rich, one last time.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the bills.
So move.
Counselor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Counselor Reuter. Any further discussion?
Ms. Mayor,
Counselor.
I do have one. On the bills, there was two items that were purchased at Walmart and one from Amazon. It says operating supplies, and I was just curious what those might be. Okay.
On that.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
You know, it just goes back to purchasing locally, and that's why I was curious.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to adjourn. I'll make the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you.